So, Todd, as per usual, you've been a little outspoken on social media about the Easter Bowl this past week that's taking place at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden in Indian Wells, California, which, for those not familiar, is the desert and it is hot. And we know it's always hot at the Easter Bowl. I've been several years and it is hot. But you have some thoughts on what the tournament decided to do in regards to the format of play. And I thought it would be good for us to hop on and talk about this because, like most matters, there are two sides, and maybe even more than that. As I was talking to my husband about this and our upcoming conversation, I was like, well, on the one hand, but on the other hand, but on the other hand, but on the other hand, I felt like Fiddler in the Roof, but the Fiddler
Yeah.
on the Roof. So, anyway, why don't we start? And to my audience, if you guys aren't familiar with Todd, go look through our archives. He's been on this podcast a gajillion times, so I'm not even going to spend time talking about who he is or why he's here. But why don't you tell us why you felt compelled to speak out about the shortened format that's being utilized at Easter Bowl this year?
Well, sure. So listen, as we all probably know, national hard courts on the boys and the girls side is known as the most prestigious national tournament, and the Easter Bowl is probably known as the second most prestigious national that our American kids can compete in, right? And in my mind, I believe that tennis comes down to how strong mentally and physically the athlete is, how well prepared they are to go into that type of tournament and do battle, right? And I played Easter Bowl many years ago, right? Actually back in 2001 was my last Easter Bowl, and I played my 16th Easter Bowl actually in the middle of the state in Florida in Greenleaf, which was an oven there. And then it was actually very hot as well at the Easter Bowl for me when I was in Palm Springs. And I was fortunate to play Indian Wells Masters Series on the tour. So I know the area decently well, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think one of the things I want to kind of point out and stay focused on is the fact that Easter Bowl has traditionally been a premier junior tournament in the US, right? This is where the top players, the players who are aspiring, yes, to maybe play high level college tennis, but beyond that, aspiring to play professionally and be successful on the pro tour. And when we look back at the history of the Easter Bowl and who has won it, we recognize a lot of those names. They
right.
have gone on to have very successful professional tennis careers. So we're not talking about a level four that is in your hometown. We are talking about a premier event.
Sure. So, I look at it this way, right? In tennis, whether you're a coach like myself or the USTA, the governing body of tennis, right? It's based on results, right? And there's a lot of discussions, right, about, foreigners, taking over Division One and high level college tennis. So I've thought about this quite a bit this week, obviously, as I've put this on social media, but if the results were really strong, right, where our American kids were not having issues going to great colleges, right, and they were playing these nationals and it was really grooming them well and everything, and they're training really well and all these things, we wouldn't even be talking right now. I'd say it's working, right? But is it working? That's the real question. Is it good for our kids to not play that third set and maybe to not do, last year in the summer, as we all know, super national clay courts is very grueling for kids and everything, right? So I put out there that I'm seeing kids and everything, and visitors that are coming to see me. And the kids aren't doing regular fitness on a daily basis. So there's no way physically that they could handle these types of tennis tournaments. It's not possible. And you see them breaking down. I mean, so how prepared are these athletes? And the USTA as well, are they concerned, or are they thinking about, hey, this is one of the biggest, most well-respected nationals in the country, and if you interviewed every single child and parent that is at that tournament, I would think, at the minimum, they're saying, I would, my child really wants to go to a certain level of college tennis. And then there's going to be a whole bunch that are going to tell you, I want to be a professional. And
Right.
so I'm going to give you one little story, but I'm going to make it super fast. So I played 2001 Easter Bowl in Palm Springs. It was super exciting for me, going in as one of the top players in the country. And it was one of the most disappointing moments of my junior career. Okay, I went out there as a fifth seed. I laid an egg first round, right? Lost, right? And I lost to a player that was good. He beat me at Kalamazoo a year or two before, right? And then backdraw time. Okay, so listen, I trained months of very rigorous training to really make a push to win super national tournaments that year and go into the University of Miami and really be prepared, right? And my goal was to win Kalamazoo, right? That really was my goal. And so I go into the back draw and I'm struggling getting through matches. And it was 2 matches a day, full 2 out of 3 sets. Plus, my coach who trained me my whole career said, I don't stay for back draw. And he flew back to Florida. And he said, you're going to play the back draw. You're going to play 2 out of 3. It's 2 out of 3 sets twice a day. My mom is like, it's an oven out here. It's 115 degrees. I'm thinking to myself, this is not a problem. It's dry heat. I'm used to all this tough humidity in Florida. And then on top of it, after 2 matches a day, and then it was, you're going to now do 30 minutes of fitness, because the way that I was trained and the mentality of the coaches plus myself was that we had trained so well and so hard to achieve a level of fitness. And this is a very professional way of doing it, that when you go to tournaments, you have to maintain your fitness level. I mean, if I'm a betting person, there's probably not one kid in that tournament right now that's doing it, but it is a very professional way. So if you are really well trained, right, physically for certain events, you have to go to tournaments and continue your fitness during the tournament. So anyways, long story short, I won 10 straight matches in the back draw. I came in 5th place. It was the single most, biggest blessing of my junior career. Gave me unbelievable confidence. I was down 4-love in the third. This gentleman, Robert Yim, he commented on Instagram.
I saw that.
He contacted me months ago because he had trained Brandon Nakashima, and I haven't spoken to this guy since we were on tour together. And he said, my father said, watch out for that redhead that you're going to play in the finals of the back draw, right? And that this, so I was down 4-love in the third, and I came back and I won, and it was like 30 and 40 mile an hour winds and whatever. It's so funny that he remembers this. I remember the good things, right? So, but it's funny that he remembers it. But this was the single biggest achievement in my junior tennis career. And I won super national clay courts, later on that year. And then, I did really well at Kalamazoo. I came in 3rd place, and this one guy beat me, and that gave me fits my whole life. But anyways, that was the single biggest achievement of my junior tennis career, coming from the absolute dumps and getting those 10 wins in that tournament, and propelled me to winning more national tournaments that year. Like, it was a great, senior year of tennis for myself. So,
right. But here's the question. So I read through all the comments on your Instagram posts. I've kept up with Colette Lewis of Zoo Tennis, who's been at Easter Bowl several days over the past week. I think she's still there, and has been writing about the heat and interviewing the players about the heat. And there are 2 sides to this, right? From your perspective, our kids need to be trained well enough that when they get to a tournament, they have the fitness level to be fine health wise out there to be able to compete at this high level, endure the conditions, whatever those may be, and just do their job, which is to go out there and fight for the win, right? The flip side of that, and I'm going to preface this by saying that I was a tennis parent in the Southern section. My son played many, many, many tournaments in extreme heat and humidity. There were, I would say, at least 5 occasions where a trainer had to come on court or get him off court, and he had to have an IV due to the fact that he was cramping, he was dehydrated because he wasn't fit and ready. Even though he trained every day in those conditions, there's a different side of it when you add the pressure of a tournament, which we all know.
Absolutely.
So, where is the line between keeping our players safe and healthy and making sure that these highest level tournaments are there to produce the highest level players in our country who can then go on to the next level, right? So it's this dilemma of balancing putting them in challenging conditions, because once they get to college or get out on tour, they're going to play in challenging conditions week after week after week. Balancing that with the fact that they are still developing physically and emotionally, but more concerned about the physical piece here. And do we risk them getting heat illness, heat stroke, dehydration, all of the things? So I've read through all the comments, and I saw some comments that the science has come a long way since you, Todd, were competing as a junior, right? We know more. We know more about the impact of extreme heat and humidity, but we also know more about nutrition, and we have better on-court solutions to extreme heat and humidity for players to consume before, during, and after they compete, right? It's a really tough dilemma. And I'm not sure what side I fall on here, other than at the very least, I never want a player's health compromised, right? Ever, ever,
Right.
ever.
So
what is the solution for a tournament like Easter Bowl or like clay courts? Because my son played that one too, and it is bloody hot out there.
Yeah.
He cramped at clay courts.
Listen, yeah, I was a heavy sweater and a heavy cramper as well. So, you know, I personally, for the kids that are putting in the proper training, I think this penalizes them because they are very prepared now from the parental side and the coach's, perspective and side. They should know if their student is ready for this. I would never in a million years send one of my students, all the way to California, right? I'm in Florida, if I did not think they were ready. And quite frankly, if I have students that are not prepared physically and obviously mentally and technically, to compete in tournaments, why are you going to compete? Right. And so, I mean,
how do you feel about the heat rule? I mean, the Pro Tour uses the heat rule.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not for it. I mean, I really think that like tennis is really made, that, and I can tell you, I mean, I have plenty of examples that, you have to be properly prepared, right? For whatever is thrown at you. This is, mentally and physically a very demanding sport, right? And the training has to be rigorous enough that you go into a tournament, regardless of what it is, and you never break down physically. Now, I can tell you that one of the golden rules of high level tennis, especially, in professional tennis, but it should be for all levels, is that you never, ever, ever, ever lose a match due to fitness, because that says that you are not prepared to do battle. Like, I mean, that's a golden rule. So,
And again, I want to differentiate between a level 7, 6, 5, even 4 tournament
right.
and a level 1, 2, 3 tournament.
Yeah.
They're very different animals.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm going to tell you, I got stories all day. Like I said, I just listened to Erotic and Larry Stefanki, the podcast. I loved every second of it and everything. But I grew up with Andy Roddick in Florida, and he came in at about 13 years old, and it was an absolute nightmare playing him. And I got to train with him on the tour, and we had awesome workouts. It was awesome, right? He treated me so well, and he's like a go-getter and a very competitive guy, kind of, like myself, but he was on a whole nother extreme. But anyways, right? He came in a skinny little guy, and he would grind you down 20, 30 balls a point, every single point. And I could hang in there, till maybe the end of the first set, a little chunky kid, from Florida. And he would just wear me down, and I'd lose like 6-4, 6-1. The second set, I was like dead, gone. And
I saw that comment too on your Instagram post that, oh, now the points are lasting so long because nobody comes to the net, right? The style of play is so different from how it was certainly when I was playing junior tennis, but I don't know that it was not that way when you were playing junior tennis.
no,
From what you're
we
saying right
had,
now, you were grinding from the
oh my
baseline.
God, 3.5 hour, death
Yeah.
matches, and twice a day. It was, I don't want to make it sound like, I went through the snow to get to practice 10 miles every day, and, took the train, and, all that kind of stuff
But
up and down the hills. Right. But, right, this was normal to play, two, really tough singles matches that could go 3.5 hours. It was pretty
yeah.
normal. Yeah.
So, what is the answer? Because from where the tournaments sit, they've got a responsibility to keep these kids healthy. And as
Well,
one parent pointed out, hang on, as one parent pointed out, at a lot of these tournaments, the main site may have a trainer, may have paramedics on site, but the satellite sites oftentimes, not only do they not have a trainer or paramedics on call, they may not have ice and water available. They may not have food available for purchase. They may not have shade for the players to go to or an indoor air conditioned area. So the tournaments are really setting themselves up for a liability issue if something disastrous happens with one of these kids.
well, is that the parent and the participants' problem or fault? Right? I mean, shouldn't there be proper medical staff at every single site, and the entry fees and the sponsors and how much money these events are bringing in, and the governing body of tennis, USTA, and everything? I mean,
But
you
I'm just
know,
saying that's the reality. So what do? You've got, 11-year-old playing 12 and unders. Their bodies are very immature, most of them at that age.
yeah.
And, you go from fine to really freaking dangerous like that in that
Yeah.
extreme heat.
Yeah. So, I look at it this way. You know, from the ages of about 10 to 14 years old, we all know the foundation. And when we talk about foundations of players, a lot of people grips and swings. Yes. But foundations of knowing how to compete, knowing how to grind out a match, knowing to control your emotions, like not just hitting a tennis ball,
Right.
right? So these years for when it really matters, when the child is probably about 16 or 17 years old, are so important. The foundation. When I'm playing Andy Roddick and he's grinding me into the ground when we're 12, 13, 14 years old, you know what it's telling me? you're a chunker. You're not in great shape like Andy Roddick, and you'll never, ever beat this guy until you get your butt in shape. And you still may never beat him, which was my case.
Yeah.
But, right? But in the great thing about individual sports, and I say this all the time, is that you can't hide in basketball, hockey, all these team sports. You can be having a bad day and you can go hide. Not in tennis. You know that when you didn't serve well, or forehands or backhands
Yeah.
or whatever it is, or you ran out of gas and all these things. And then by the time you play your next tournament, you want to see that better. And the greatest teacher, in my opinion, is pain, right? That's the greatest teacher, right? My students hear this from me. My parents hear this from me. And now all your audience is going to hear it. That's how you learn. It's not about,
And
hiding
you're
and
not just talking, let me just clarify, you're not just talking about physical pain.
no,
You're
I'm just talking about
talking about
painful
emotional pain
experiences. When
because
Coco Golf goes and serves 20 double faults a match, that's painful. I'm just talking about painful experiences. And
yeah,
you either learn from them by the time you compete and you fix it, or you don't and you can't hide, right? That's the beauty of all these individual sports.
yeah. So what's the answer for tournaments like Easter Bowl? Because listen, I love that tournament. I've
Me
been
too. Me too.
multiple times. It's a beautiful event. It's in an incredible facility. I mean,
Yeah.
kids getting to play at Indian Wells Tennis Garden. Holy
Yeah.
cow. What a
That
treat.
was that was my favorite ATP tournament, bar none. Like I was like, I've died and gone to heaven here.
It's phenomenal. So
Yeah,
we want the tournament to continue to thrive, and we want our American juniors to continue to be competitive at the highest level of the game, whether that's at junior slams, whether that's in college, whether that's moving on to professional tennis. We want our kids to have opportunities to train and compete and become their best selves, right? At the same
absolutely.
time, we want them to be healthy. We don't want to have something happen at age 12 that is going to cause a long term, if not permanent, setback for them. So, what's the answer? I mean, I pose this to you again because I don't want the people watching this thinking we're dissing Easter Bowl. We are absolutely not. I mean,
I
Easter
love
Bowl
it.
is
Yeah.
it's a phenomenal event. And they had to make some tough calls this week with the weather conditions. Should they not have shortened the format to a 10-point tiebreaker? I mean, I don't know. In the early rounds of a tournament, is it really that big of a deal to shorten the format? They've gone back to full third sets for the final rounds of the event, which I commend them on. And granted, the weather has calmed down a little bit. But what's the answer? What should they have done?
I mean, I just feel that, the kids need to be prepared. Like I tell my students all the time, mentally and physically, right? Because they're in tough tournaments and they're here in South Florida year round in very, tough climates. And I tell them, you need to be trained so well that you can play 2 to 3 hours twice a day, mentally and physically, right? To get through tennis tournaments. That's our absolute goal, right? And maybe it's the child's in
What
great
do you,
shape. Yeah.
But what do you say to the kid that lives in the Northeast or the North where it's cold and they're playing
Mm-hmm.
indoors for many months of the year, leading right up to, by the way, the Easter Bowl? They're not even outdoors yet in some parts of the country because the weather's still so crummy. How does a kid like that get ready for these conditions? Or do
Sure.
they
So,
just
I mean,
succumb?
yeah, no, I trust me, I get it. But you need to know then that, the child is not really ready and prepared to play in that event. So maybe you chalk it up as this is an experience. We're not expecting tremendous results. The preparation of you're playing indoors and then going to Indian Wells where you not only have the heat, but you could be in like, windstorms of this,
Crazy gusts,
I
yes.
mean, how is an indoor kid I mean, you hear about it when they come to Supernational Clay Courts here in Florida, and these kids, I'm like, you haven't done any fitness, or you haven't hit outside, and you're coming into clay and 100 degrees and high humidity, and hey, man, I wish you
But
luck.
in the summer, it's a little different because they're not in
Yeah.
school, presumably, and they can come for a week or 10 days ahead of the tournament and get used to the conditions. This time of year, for kids that are in traditional school, which granted, not a lot of them are anymore, but for the ones who are, and even for the ones who aren't, quite frankly, to spend the money to come stay out here, and it ain't cheap in the desert. I'm here
Yeah.
to tell you, to spend that money to come out 10 days early to get used to the conditions. Not everybody can do that. They can't afford it, or mom and dad can't take the time off work, or, whatever the case may be.
Of
But
of course.
that's just not available to all of these
Yeah,
people.
I mean, I think that, between the parents, the child, and the coaches, they need to know if it's realistic for that child, to go out there and get results in that environment. Right? I mean, I wrote an article on this, years ago about, indoor to outdoor and these types
We
of
did a
things.
podcast on that.
Right. Okay. Hey, you
Yeah,
remember. I don't
I
remember. But
do.
okay.
do.
So it takes weeks. I mean, so,
It's a big transition.
yeah. And not only that, I thought about this too this week. The time, energy, and money invested to go to California and understand that, my child isn't really ready, for this event. So what are the expectations then, right? If you're not ready, number one, you can not go,
Mhm.
okay? Or number two, you go out there with no expectations and chalk it up as an experience. Whether my child goes far, wins matches, bombs out in the first round, like I did, So, all, these different circumstances can happen, and just be realistic. And if the child loses early, don't go ballistic. In the back of your mind that, what? They're not prepared, but they're out here trying their best, which is beautiful and terrific. Don't expect them to make the semifinals or win the damn thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point, and I think it's one that coaches need to do better at that, at giving the reality check, because sometimes the parents don't really understand the physical demands of playing in extreme heat, wind, et cetera, especially for those kids who are in indoor conditions for several months leading up to this tournament. But also, especially in like the 12s and 14s, where the kids are still really learning what it means to compete at a high level, the onus is on the parents and the coaches to be the voice of reason in these circumstances. And I'm really torn about, should the tournament shorten the format because it's unsafe? And I do think there is a temperature at which a shortened format is a must, because, again, the last thing we want is to put kids' health in danger. But there is that fine line. If it's 95 degrees on court, I mean, I play in 95-degree weather and I'm 63 years old. My body doesn't handle it so well. But I'm with you, Todd. I'm never losing a match because I've been out fitnessed on the court. That is my mindset at 63, playing my little ladies league. So I think we have to instill that mindset in the coaches who are training these players and in the players themselves, that you may not be the best player, but by God, you're going to be the fittest player on court if
Yeah.
you want to continue to play in these types of tournaments.
Yeah.
And again, if you don't want to put in that level of training, that's okay. This is not the level of tournament if you're not willing to put in that level of training.
Yeah. I mean, Lisa, my number one goal, I mean, listen, I mean, people watching on social media, they've listened to us so many times on your awesome podcasts and everything, right? My
Yeah.
number one goal, right? Obviously, this is, I put stuff on social media. It's my free marketing. Like we know this, but my number one goal is the education behind this so people can make an educated decision for themselves and their child.
Yeah.
What is a true high performance tennis player? What are the rigors, right? What do they really need? I mean, people call me and they come and see me and they're like flabbergasted. They're like, oh my God, your kids do this 50 weeks a year? Yes, they do.
Well,
To
even
me, this is normal.
the families that come down to you to kind of test out whether it's a good fit, a lot of
Yeah.
times it's just not, because they're
They don't
not
want to work hard
prepared.
enough.
They don't want to train at that level. And again,
Yeah,
that's fine.
absolutely.
Know that if you're not training at that level,
Yeah.
playing a tournament like the Easter Bowl probably isn't a good choice.
Right. Just understand that there's different levels and get educated, and what's realistic, right, for each situation,
Yeah.
right? I think, a true high performance arena is a big eye-opening experience for most parents and kids, right?
Yeah.
And in other parts of the world, we all know that, I mean, I do, the way they're training would probably seem very barbaric to a lot of people in America, right? But
Yeah.
again, I always say the results never lie. They never do, right? And I'll tell you another little story. I had a buddy of mine that I played with on tour, right? I'll make it very brief, right? And he was a top college player, top 5 or 10 in the country. He turns pro, right? And then one of his buddies goes to Argentina to train. And he came back and he said, we have no chance from what I just experienced about how hard these players and how rigorous the training is, right? And understand that, I mean, I was trained in a very rigorous arena my whole life. And it was to, get as good as you possibly could, whether that was to a certain level of college or a professional tennis career, but you were going to train at an unbelievably high level of exhaustion, and it was to be done right, and there was no other way.
Right. And again, it's not for everybody, and that's
Absolutely not.
okay.
Yeah.
That's why we have 7 levels of junior tournaments. There
Right.
is a level appropriate for each level of training that a child and a family are willing to commit to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay. That's fine. We
Yeah.
want play. I never played high level, but look at me at my age. I'm still playing 4-0 women's tennis.
Yeah.
I was
But
never willing to train at that level, and therefore I never went to that level of tournament,
right.
is my point.
But the golden nugget, the golden rule when I was growing up is, and this was parents and coaches, if we're gonna do it right, we're gonna do it right. And if not, you're not gonna do it. Right. And so if kids are not training at a very high level, there shouldn't be complaining about college placement opportunities.
No.
Okay. You got to put your butt on the line. This is years. This is extremely rigorous. It's extremely grueling, right? And the numbers don't lie. The UTR numbers aren't lying. People, oh, this, that, they're pretty accurate. Nothing's perfect, but they're
Yeah.
pretty accurate on what each player is,
Right.
right? And at the end of the day, right, people need to be educated on what this really takes on a daily basis with everybody involved.
Right. But getting back to Easter Bowl and their decision to go to a 10-point tiebreaker and move a third set at the beginning of the tournament, I I I think they made the right call. I really do. And I think that I'm happy that the weather kind of eased up, and I'm happy that they adjusted based on the conditions. I think that was a good move for them. They went back to the full third set. So I think starting at the quarters in the 16s and 18s, they've played full third sets. I'm not sure if the 12s and 14s, I have to go back and look at the final rounds if they ever went back to a full third set because it was still pretty hot midweek, which is when they finished.
Yeah. The way that I see it, Lisa, is that you don't want to bring an element of luck into play in a very high level tournament.
Yeah.
Okay. The most
Well, there's
prepared.
always a little bit of luck with the draw and things like that,
Yes, but when
but
you bring a 10-point tiebreaker into play,
yes.
a lot can happen, right, in those, 10 minutes of, finishing the match,
Yeah.
right? Where I always believe that the best and most prepared player should win,
Right.
right? Whatever format, right? But so that's the way that I see it. And then it's always who's the most prepared, child, right? And that's how I think it should be determined, the winner and the loser, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I feel about it, right? So,
Well, like I said, I didn't go back and look at what they did for the finals or even the semis for the 12s and 14s, given
right.
that they had very few matches to play in those divisions. Um, it's I'm hoping they went back to a full third set because they could have played them early in the morning before it got too hot, or waited till things cooled off later in the evening. Um, but again, that's a challenge for the tournament. It's a challenge for the staff. It's a challenge for hotels and travel and all the things that families are dealing with
what
going to
what
these tournaments.
what I would love to know, right, if it's
And
possible or not,
let me just say, hopefully somebody will comment on wherever you're consuming this and let us know if you were there, what was
right?
going on for those rounds.
I don't know if it's possible, but I would love to know how the families that are making the investment on time, energy, and money, and when they're going out to California, if they're not based in California, how do they feel about this? Right?
Well,
When
I
you
think
go
you
to a
saw some
tournament,
comments. You saw some comments from
that's a
parents, Todd.
couple. Yeah, that's
Right.
some.
And some of them are putting their child's health first, and that's all they're concerned about. It's too hot. These kids shouldn't be playing full third sets in this heat. We're glad the tournament did this. And then others, and I suspect the others, some of them are people who grew up playing the sport at a high level. So their expectation is a little different, maybe. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But, they were in your camp, that they were appalled that the format would be shortened.
Yeah, I mean, what can I tell you? I mean,
I don't think there's a right answer here, one right answer. I think USTA and the tournament committee did the best for the overall health of the players, given the situation and given the information they had. I think they made the right call because it was extreme. Um, that said, I think there needs to be some conversations before the next tournament, which the next really hot one will be clay courts and then hard courts. And listen, some of the age groups of hard courts are played in Georgia, they're played in Florida. I mean, they're played in hot places. So I think these conversations need to be happening before the next big event comes up and decisions need to be made. I think part of the issue is when you sign up for a tournament and the tournament website says this is the format, and then you get there and because of conditions they change the format, that's a problem.
yeah,
So I think there needs to be better guidelines, maybe like the pro tour, they use the wet bulb blah 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 thing on the court that says if it's above a certain temperature we delay play or we change to a 10-point breaker in lieu of a third set. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not on any of those committees. So, but if anybody from USTA, if anybody from the Easter Bowl, from National Hard Courts is listening to this, please have these conversations and let the families know in advance what to expect if unforeseen weather happens to be a factor, which in this day and age, it's likely to be a factor.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. And, what's going through my mind is, listen, things change, right? But at the end of the day, all of these kids, whether it's the 12s all the way through the 18s, I can guarantee you, if not every single kid in that tournament or the vast, vast majority of them are thinking about a certain level of college or a professional tennis career playing in this type of event. So, is this preparing them for their goals and dreams? Is it helping them? Right?
Yeah.
That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. And I think that's the right way to look at it. And we have to make sure we're doing a better job communicating what the formats are going to be, being prepared for extenuating circumstances, and communicating that to the families prior to registration deadlines and prior to people booking plane tickets and hotel time off work and all the things that are involved in traveling to these tournaments. I think that's only fair. And I would like to see USTA and the tournaments do a little better job at that. They've gotten better since when my son was competing, I can tell you. It's better than 10 years ago, but there's still room for improvement. And I would like to see that happen. And I want to see these exclusive high level tournaments continue to be testing grounds for our next generation of high level college and professional players. And the only way to do that is to keep the standards way up here and to have an expectation that any player registering and being accepted into these tournaments is not only at a certain skill level with their tennis, but is also at a certain fitness level, an emotional level, and can handle the stress of competing against the top players in their age group in the country.
Couldn't have said it any better. Wow,
There we go.
that was good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take it. All right,
Well done.
Todd, I'm going to let you get back to your family. I'm going to get back to my family. This is just a little bonus episode we threw together last minute. So I hope it gives everybody food for thought. Please feel free to contact either Todd or me. I'll put our contact info in the show notes. I'm just going to write up something really quick because I want to get this online tonight. And share your thoughts. If you were at Easter Bowl, share your thoughts with the tournament committee. Most of these tournaments do a post-tournament survey. Be straight up with them, and I know people are kind of hesitant to speak their mind with these tournaments, but I think this is an opportunity for everything to get better. And I think if we all approach it with that in mind, that we're all looking to make things better, then I think it's a win for everybody. So thank you all for tuning in. Todd, thank you so much for doing this and for continuing to speak out and for coming on this platform to share your thoughts.
Thanks very much, Lisa. I'm sure we'll do it again at some point.
I'm sure we will. See ya. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Take care.